Hello, my name is Christine Guzman, and I decided to do my project on compare and contrast on the Islamic and Greek civilizations. Let's talk about the Greek civilization and what made them great. The people of the ancient Greece built on the traditions and ideas of earlier societies to develop a culture that fundamentally shaped the civilization of the western part of Eurasia, much as the Chinese culture shaped the civilization of the eastern part. The Greek were the first in the Mediterranean and neighboring areas to explore many of the questions about the world and the place of humans in it that continue to concern thinkers today. Drawing on their day-to-day experiences as well as logic and empirical observation, they developed ways of understanding and explaining the world around them that grew into modern philosophy and science. The Greeks were very successful in their environment and how they made it grow. Hellas, as the Greek called their land, encompasses the Greek peninsula with the southern peninsular extension known as the Peloponnese and the islands surrounding it, an area known as the Aegean. During the Bronze Age, for Greek history is called the Helladic period, earlier settlers in the Greece began establishing small communities contoured by the mountains and small plains that shaped the land. The Greece generally received enough rainfall for agriculture, and though Greeks terraced hillside to create more land for crops, large-scale irrigation projects that promoted greater political centralization were not needed and not built. Periodic droughts and other natural disasters shaped economic and political developments. Bronze Age farmers and fishermen began to trade their surpluses with their neighbors, and cities grew, housing artisans and merchants. Though they did have their downfall, which is called the Dark Age, cities were destroyed, populations declined, villages were abandoned, and trade decreased. Even writing at that time was a cause of the casualty. The Bronze Age collapse led to widespread and prolonged movement of the Greek people, both within Greece itself and beyond. They ended up dispersing beyond the mainland of Greece, further south to the islands of Aegean Sea and to the shores of the Anatolia in modern-day Turkey. Science and medicine, which is my favorite, one of the things that I believe that you need to have as a criteria for a great civilization. For the Greek, the greatest thinker of the Hellenistic period was Archimedes. A clever inventor, he devised a water screw to draw water from a lower to a higher level, a compound pulley to lift heavy weights, and several war machines. Hellenistic science was often used for purpose of war. Hellenistic rulers intent on expanding their territories were willing to invest huge amounts of money to design and build offensive weapons to protect against invading armies. Theories of mechanics were applied to build military machines. War and illness fed the need for medical advances, and doctors as well as scientists combined observation with theory during the Hellenistic period. Now let's jump into the Islamic civilization. Islam developed in the Arabian Peninsula and Samarrid land that had been on the outskirts of the earlier empires. While the religion incorporated certain Arabian social and cultural features, the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad were and are at its core. The speed with which Islam spread is one of the most amazing stories in the world history, and scholars have pointed to many factors that must have contributed to its success, such as strong military victories rooted in strong military organization and the practice of establishing garrison cities in newly conquered territories. A little information about the culture in the Arabian Peninsula. Muhammad's time Arabia was inhabited by various groups, many of them being the Bedouins. The power of the Bedouins came from their fighting skills, toughness, control trade, and possessions of horses and camels. For all other people in the Arabian Peninsula, the basic social unit was the clan, a group of blood relation connected through a male bloodline. Clans and multi-clan groups, often called tribes, expected loyalty from their members and in turn provided support and protection. By now you're probably wondering who's Muhammad. Muhammad was a merchant in a caravan trade who later married a wealthy widow, a marriage that brought him financial independence. He was devout, self-disciplined, and literate, but not formally educated. He prayed regularly, and around the age of 40 he began to experience religious visions. Muhammad described these visions in a stylized and often rhyming prose and used this literary medium as his Quran or prayer recitation. The revelations were written down by its followers during his lifetime and organized into chapters called the Surah, shortly after his death. In 651, an official version published which became the Quran, especially revered by Muslims as the direct word of God to his prophet Muhammad. Islam also had their form of teaching. The 5 pillars of Islam, the basic tenets of the Islamic faith, which include the profession of faith, prayer, fasting, giving alms to the poor, and pilgrimage to Mecca. How I view that both civilizations are similar. The preservation and transferring Greek knowledge between the two civilizations during the Middle Ages, saving documentation of human achievements across different cultures. They both had high importance for knowledge in practical fields such as medicine and engineering, leading to advancements in technologies, even those that we have today. Both contributed to the development of Arab intellectual, economic, and social advancement during the period known as the Islamic Golden Age. What greatness is differed from the Greek and Islamic civilization? First can be their religious belief. Islam was founded by the Prophet Muhammad, they did as his word, and the Greek civilization, they used philosophy influenced by philosophers. Political system also, Greek the Greeks were divided into different cities and empires, while Islam was controlled by a centralized government, and also their culture practices. Islam was known for the preservation of Greek texts, and the Greek were known for its contributions to mathematics, medicine, and philosophy. Thank you for listening to my presentation.